Hello, horror lovers. Welcome to the chilling world of Mr. Haunt. Please subscribe. It's our biggest motivation to keep bringing you spine-tingling stories. Let us know in the comments which city you're listening from. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Now, let's get into the stories. I was 13 when it happened to me. Old enough to know what fear was, but too young to understand how deeply it could root itself in your body, how it could change the shape of your life forever. We lived on a small farm in rural Michigan, not the picturesque kind with painted barns and golden cornfields, but the rougher sort, overgrown, underfunded, and half forgotten. My father had inherited it from his father, who'd lost most of it to debts and drink. All that was left was the main house, an old chicken coop, a collapsing barn, and maybe 10 acres of land surrounded by woods, so thick they swallowed sound, and they hid things that shouldn't have been able to walk on 2 legs. The first time I heard it, I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar creaks of the old farmhouse settling into the cold. Then came something else, crunch, like leaves. Then again, closer. I thought maybe it was the neighbor's dog, an old German shepherd that sometimes wandered over. I looked out the window, but I couldn't see much in the dark. Just the faint outline of the chicken coop, about 20 yards away. Then I heard a sound that didn't fit, scraping metal on wood. Slow, deliberate, the coop door. I crept downstairs, barefoot, careful not to wake my father, who would have whipped me for being up at that hour. Outside, the porch boards groaned under my weight. The air was cold enough to bite, and I remember the sky being so clear you could see every star. That's how I noticed the chickens were silent. They're never silent. Not unless something's wrong. I inched closer to the coop, flashlight trembling in my hand. Then I saw it, not clearly, just a shadow. It was crouched over, back turned to me, but even hunched it stood taller than a man. Its shoulders were broad, and I could see the faint shimmer of matted fur under the moonlight. Its legs were bent backward like a dog's hindquarters, but it had arms, long, sinewy, ending in something like hands. One hand was clutching a chicken. The chicken wasn't moving. I gasped. That was enough. It turned its head, not all the way, just enough for one glowing eye to catch the light from my flashlight, and it grinned, not in a human way. This was a snarl with teeth too large and lips too thin to cover them. Then it stood up. 7, maybe 8 feet tall, shoulders hunched, long limbs swaying, and it took a single step toward me. I ran. The silence that followed. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't tell my dad either. I tried once, the next morning, but he laughed it off. Big dogs in the woods, boy, that's all. Maybe a coyote, but the coop door was torn off the hinges. The latch was shredded like it had been worked loose by claws instead of pried by hands. 3 chickens were missing. The rest refused to come out of the corner for days. My father boarded it up and muttered something about wild animals, but that night, I heard it again. This time, it was closer. Walking in circles around the house. I kept the lights off, just sat in my room, listening to the way the leaves crunched beneath something heavy and determined, something that walked like a man, but moved like it had never truly been one. The disappearance of Wally Marsh. 3 days later, our neighbor disappeared. Wally Marsh lived about a mile up the road. Mid-50s, friendly enough, but he liked his solitude. Drove into town once a week for groceries, and kept mostly to himself. His truck was found in his driveway, door open, keys in the ignition. His house was a mess, signs of a struggle. His back door was torn right off the hinges and drag marks led from the kitchen to the back porch. Then out into the woods. No footprints, just the drag marks, and deep, 3, clawed impressions scattered every few yards, like something walked, dropped him, dragged him, then walked again. The sheriff said maybe it was a bear, maybe a home invasion gone wrong, but they didn't find blood, didn't find anything, really, and nobody mentioned the smell that lingered near his house, like wet fur and meat left in the sun. The night it tried the door, the worst night of my life, wasn't the first time I saw it. It was the night it wanted in. I was alone. Dad had gone into town, planning to stay with friends overnight, while he dealt with some farm equipment issue. I told him I'd be fine. The power went out around midnight. I lit a few candles and curled up on the couch, trying to ignore the way the wind howled through the eaves. Then I heard the knocking, not on the door, on the walls, the side of the house, then the back, then the front again, slow, like it was walking in circles, testing every wall, every corner. Then came the scratching, like claws dragging along the wood, and then a voice, Bowie. It said it just like that, drawn out, mocking, like it had learned the word but didn't know how to shape it. Come out, Bowie, come out and play. It laughed after that, a dry, choking laugh that sounded like a dog trying to speak through broken teeth. I grabbed my dad's shotgun and sat in the hallway, shaking. The doorknob rattled. Then I saw its shadow move past the living room window, huge, slouched with ears, like a wolf and a snout that brushed the glass. I aimed the gun but didn't fire, because I knew it wasn't here to break in. It was here to see if I would invite it. The aftermath when my father came back. I told him everything. He didn't laugh this time. He sat down and poured himself a drink. You remember your Uncle Len? He asked. I nodded. Uncle Len had disappeared years ago. Everyone said he'd run off. He didn't leave. He went into the woods one night with his rifle and never came back. I found his boot 2 miles deep, wedged between 2 trees like something had thrown it there. He paused. There are things in these woods, son. Always have been. You don't go out at night. You don't answer voices. And you never look them in the eyes. I left that place as soon as I could. Moved to the city. Married. Had kids. But every once in a while, I'll hear a story. Someone goes missing. Something seen on a trail camera. A scream in the woods no one can explain. Sometimes, I dream about the porch and the eyes staring in through the glass, waiting, and I know it's still there, because you don't survive something like that and come away untouched. Part of me never left that farmhouse, and part of it never stopped following me. One evening I was dizzy. I hadn't eaten all day, and the sun was starting to slip behind the trees in northern Minnesota. I was helping my Uncle Ray with some repairs on his trapper cabin, the kind of place that sits at the end of an unmarked gravel road, surrounded by nothing but trees and regret. It had been years since I'd seen him. He was my mom's older brother, the one who stayed behind when everyone else moved to Minneapolis. He lived alone. Claimed he liked it that way, said the woods were honest. I was 23 then. Burnt out from college, no job yet, and I thought a couple weeks in the deep woods might clear my head. That was before I saw what walked on 2 legs behind his cabin at night, before I saw the eyes. The first couple nights were uneventful. Just beer, fried venison, and stories about how the world had gone to shit. Uncle Ray wasn't a talkative man, but once he got a few drinks in him, he'd tell stories that twisted your gut, about weird lights, mutilated deer, and people who just stopped being people out here. He never said the word Dogman, not once, but that's exactly what he was talking about. I just didn't know it yet. The cabin had no electricity, just a wood stove and a hand pump for water. At night, it was like stepping back in time, or maybe into some place that time forgot. I started noticing something off around the 3rd night. I couldn't sleep. The wind had died completely, and the woods were so still, I could hear my own blood in my ears. Then, I heard something else. Footsteps, not crunching through leaves, just moving. Carefully, Dot measured, like a person walking barefoot. I thought maybe it was Ray, but when I crept to the front room, I saw him through the window, out by the tree line, facing the woods, shotgun in hand. He was whispering something, not to me, not to himself, to the trees. I didn't go back to bed. In the morning, I asked him what he was doing out there. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Sometimes the woods watch you back." That's all. That evening, we went down to the Cutbank Creek, about half a mile from the cabin. Ray wanted to check his traps. I carried a rifle he insisted I take, though I'd never fired one. By the time we got there, the sun was hanging low in orange. The creek had that cold, slow sound, like the earth itself was trying not to breathe too loud. One of the traps was empty. The other had something in it, but it wasn't an animal. It was what was left of one. A rabbit, torn in half, spine snapped, clean. The meat looked twisted, not chewed, almost like it had been crushed in a human hand. The weirdest part, there was no blood, none, just the body, mangled and dry. Ray looked around like he expected something. "We're leaving," he said. That night he locked the cabin from the inside with a long iron bar. Then he took a jar of ashes and scattered them in a circle around the front steps. "Don't leave the cabin after dark," he told me. "Don't open the door for anyone, not even me, unless I say the word oak root. Got it?" I nodded, confused and more than a little scared. He didn't say goodnight. Sometime after midnight, I heard scraping, soft at first, then louder. It was coming from the back wall of the cabin. I held my breath, then something knocked. 1, 2, 3 times. It didn't sound like a hand, it sounded like nails. The knock came again, this time on the window by my cot. I stayed frozen. That's when I saw them. Eyes, too high off the ground to be human, glowing faint yellow, staring directly into the window without blinking. I couldn't move. Then it smiled. I swear to God, it pulled its lips back. Long, thin lips, over rows of teeth. Sharp, uneven, some broken dot. And then, it whispered, "Okrut." I nearly wet myself, but I remembered what Ray said. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe. The thing stood there for what felt like forever. Then it made a low, snarling sound and disappeared into the trees. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Ray didn't say much the next morning. He just packed 2 bags, loaded the truck, and said we were leaving early. I told him what happened. His face went pale. "It's not supposed to talk," he muttered. "God help us." I pressed him for answers, but he just shook his head. "There's a reason no one lives near Cutbank anymore. Used to be a whole community up here, decades ago. Folks started disappearing. Dogs, then kids, then whole families. Locals say they saw something with a wolf's head and a man's body crawling across roofs, standing in roads, whispering their names." I asked if he believed that. "I didn't," he said, "until it called me by mine." We left the cabin that afternoon. I've never been back. Sometimes I still dream about those yellow eyes. They follow me through alleys, across snowy roads, into basements. Sometimes, just before I wake up, I hear it whisper, not my name, not anymore. Now it just says, "Oakroot," and laughs. I was 19 when it happened to me. Back then, I thought I knew everything. I just dropped out of community college, decided I was going to find myself, and moved in with my cousin Wes for the summer. He was living out in southern Missouri, in a trailer near Mark Twain National Forest. Said I could crash with him and help with odd jobs while I figured out my next move. At first, it wasn't so bad. The woods were thick and green, and the nearest town was a 20-minute drive. We'd spend the mornings splitting firewood and the evenings drinking cheap beer under the stars, listening to cicadas scream like broken radios. Then one night, something screamed back. The thing started with the coyotes. They came out like clockwork around dusk. You'd hear one yip, then another, and soon the whole forest was howling like some ancient chorus, except one night, they just stopped. All of them, at once. Like someone flipped a switch. Wes noticed it first. "Too quiet," he muttered, taking a sip of beer. "Coyotes don't shut up unless something bigger's out there." I joked about bears or maybe a mountain lion, but he didn't laugh. "No, man," he said, standing up. "I mean bigger." I followed his gaze to the edge of the tree line. Something was moving, slow and deliberate. We couldn't see it, not really. Just the way the shadow seemed to lean forward as it passed. Something heavy brushing the undergrowth. We went inside, locked the door, and didn't talk much after that. That night, I woke up to a sound I couldn't place. A soft, rhythmic thud against the side of the trailer. I sat up, heart already racing. Thud, then silence, then again, thud, thud. I got out of bed, pulled the curtain back, and froze. There was something standing at the far edge of the clearing, just inside the tree line. I couldn't see it well, just a tall, dark figure, slouched, watching. I remember thinking it looked like a statue until it tilted its head, just slightly, like a dog hearing a distant whistle. Then it moved, not toward me, just around. Circling the trailer, I backed away from the window. The thuds came again, then a scratching sound, low and slow, like claws across metal. Then it was gone. I didn't tell Wes right away. I didn't want to sound crazy, but he brought it up the next morning. "Something was sniffing around last night," he said. "Came all the way up to the propane tank. I found prints." We went outside. He wasn't kidding. Huge prints, longer than my foot, with 3 deep toe marks and claw indents at the tips. They weren't bear, weren't dog either. Something in between. Wes was quiet for a long time. "I seen one once," he finally said. "Out past the fire. Break 2 years back. Thought it was a coyote at first, but it was too tall. Stood up on 2 legs. Had a muzzle like a dog but eyes like a man. It watched me for a minute, then ran off. I asked him why he stayed. He just shrugged. It never came back. But now it had. The next few nights got worse. We'd hear it out. They're moving through the brush, circling the trailer, tapping the windows. Once, we heard it laugh. A short, barking sound, like it was mocking us. We started sleeping in shifts. Wes with his .30 across his lap. Me with a flashlight and a growing sense of dread I couldn't shake. Then it tried the door. I was awake, sitting at the table. 3A.M. It jiggled the handle. Not hard, just a test. Then the screen door creaked open, and something scratched the metal behind it. Wes woke up swinging. He flung the main door open and fired 2 shots into the dark. Silence. We never found blood, just more prints, and a long gouge across the door frame, deep enough to show the wood beneath. Wes wanted to leave. Said he had a friend up north who'd take us in, but I was stubborn. I told him we couldn't let a wild animal run us off. He gave me a look I'll never forget. It ain't an animal. The next day, we tried to set up a motion-triggered camera. Cheap thing, but it was all we had. We baited it with raw meat and left it pointed at the clearing. When we checked the SD card the next morning, there were only 3 photos. 1, the meat. 2, a blur of motion. 3, nothing but trees. But the meat was gone, and the camera had been moved, just slightly, tilted to the side, as if someone had reached down and adjusted it. Wes turned pale. He packed a bag that night and told me he was heading out in the morning whether I was coming or not. I didn't argue. The last night still wakes me up sometimes. It came closer than ever. We were both awake, lights off, guns ready, and we heard it breathing right outside the wall, heavy, wet, like it was sniffing. Then something brushed the side of the trailer, shoulder height, scraping as it moved. It circled, once, twice, then it stopped at the window, and we saw it. Not a shadow, not a blur. Its head was too big for its body, wide and muscular like a pit bull, with ears that twitched constantly. Its shoulders rolled with each breath, arms too long, hanging down past its knees. Its legs bent backwards. Its skin was furred, but patchy, like it had mange. And its eyes, those were the worst part. Not glowing, just pale. Human. It opened its mouth and pressed its teeth to the glass. Wes raised the rifle. The thing blinked. Then it stood. Its spine cracked audibly as it stretched upright, now towering over the trailer, ROOFLINE. Then it grinned and walked away. We left the next day. I haven't been back. I never saw Wes again, either. He disappeared. 6 months later, his truck was found near that same trailer, but he was gone. No signs of struggle. No blood. Just prints leading into the woods. Some say he went looking for it. Some say he joined it. I don't know. But some nights, when it's real quiet, I think I hear the coyotes start up, then fall silent. And I remember what Wes told me. It ain't a coyote. When I was 12, my parents sent me to live with my grandfather for the summer. They said it was to get me away from the city, but even at that age, I knew they needed space. Mom was between jobs. Dad was drinking again. I wasn't dumb. Grandpa's place was an old farm tucked deep into rural Kentucky. No neighbors for miles. A rusted pickup, a faded barn, and fields that went on forever. There was a hollow out back, thick woods that dropped off into a ravine. The kind of place locals called bad ground. I didn't know that then. All I knew was it smelled like damp leaves and diesel, and that Grandpa always locked the barn from the outside. Grandpa wasn't much of a talker. Mosley grunted his way through the day, smoked Marlboros, and spoke only when absolutely necessary. But he had rules. Don't go past the tree line after dark. Don't talk to anything that talks first. And for the love of God, don't go near the barn after sunset. I broke all three, but not at once. It started with the dogs. Grandpa had two, Boone and Charlie. Big old bloodhounds with sagging skin and haunted eyes. They never barked, not even when strangers pulled up. They just watched. One night, about a week after I arrived, I woke up to the sound of them whining, low and sharp. I looked out the window. They were facing the barn, not growling, not wagging, just staring. I went to tell Grandpa, but he was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table in his underwear, shotgun in his lap. "Stay away from the windows," he said. "It's hungry tonight." I didn't sleep. A few days later, I started exploring the edge of the hollow. Grandpa let me roam during the day, and I'd often walk to the far fence where the trees thickened. There was a narrow trail that dipped down, disappearing into the dark, even in full sunlight. That path gave me chills. Then one afternoon, I saw something at the tree line, just for a second. A shape, too tall for a man, too thin for a bear. It was watching me. I froze, blinked. It was gone. When I told Grandpa, he took a long drag off his cigarette, exhaled through his nose, and said, "They come through sometimes. Just don't give 'em a reason." I didn't know what that meant, but that night, the dogs scratched at the back door until their paws bled. 2 weeks in, I heard it speak. I was in bed, barely drifting off, when a voice called from the field outside my window. "Buddy, hey, buddy, you left your ball out here." It was my dad's voice, but he wasn't in Kentucky. I sat up, heart pounding. "Come get your ball, kiddo," it said again. Closer this time. "Don't be scared." Then came this scratching dot, not on the window. Underneath it, like claws on wood, searching for a way in. I turned on the lamp. Silence. I didn't sleep again that night. EITHER. I finally broke the biggest rule. In early July. It had been storming hard for hours. Lightning, wind, everything. The dogs were howling in the crawl space under the house, and Grandpa was gone. Into town for supplies. I heard something crash behind the barn, like metal hitting concrete then. Boone started barking. I grabbed a flashlight and ran outside before I could think better of it. Rain lashed my face. The beam from the flashlight was weak, flickering. I turned the corner and saw the barn door swinging. Open. Unlocked. Boone was nowhere. I called for him. Something called back, but it wasn't a bark. It was a low, wet growl, like something trying to sound like a dog, and failing. The flashlight flickered again. I stepped closer. There was something just inside the barn, squatting, breathing. I could hear its chest rise and fall. Could see the shine of its eyes in the dark. Not animal eyes, not fully. Then it stood and ducked under the beam. 7 feet tall, if not more. Long snout, twisted, tufts of matted fur. Arms too long, legs like a dog, but wrong, and teeth. So many. They didn't fit in its mouth. Then it grinned. "Buddy," it whispered. In my dad's voice, I ran. I don't remember getting back inside. I just remember slamming the door and hearing the thing hit it a moment later. It scratched, clawed, pounded. The dogs were dead quiet. Then a voice came through the door. Not my dad this time. Me. "Let me in, please. It's me. I'm scared." Over and over, until morning. Grandpa didn't yell. He just nodded when I told him. Then, he took me out back, lit a cigarette, and said, "We feed it a goat every fall. Keeps it from roaming. But it's hungry this year." I stared at him. "You knew it was out there." He shrugged. "Been in this hollow longer than we have. Maybe longer than anything." I asked what it was. He said nothing. Just stared at the barn. Then he said, almost like a prayer, "It walks like a man, but don't ever mistake it for one." I left 2 days later. Parents came to pick me up. I never went back. Grandpa died the following spring. I didn't go to the funeral. I did get a letter, though, handwritten, mailed before he passed. "If you ever hear your own voice in the woods, don't answer. And if the dogs stop barking, don't run. Just shut your eyes. It likes fear best of all." Sometimes I dream about the barn. The creaking wood. The thing with my face. And sometimes, when I'm out walking alone, I hear something in the trees behind me. Too quiet for a coyote. Too fast for a man. And I remember what Grandpa said. It walks like a man, but it isn't. One night something happened, which I cannot forget. I was 21 and working as a seasonal park ranger in northern Michigan, up near the Ottawa National Forest. It was supposed to be temporary, just a summer gig before I started welding school. That fall, I thought it would be peaceful, simple trail patrol, some wildlife monitoring, helping tourists with directions. It was peaceful, at first, for about a week. Then the local reports started rolling in. Missing pets, gutted deer, strange prints, howls that didn't match anything in the ranger guidebooks. And that's when I started hearing about McCullough Ridge. No one said the name casually. When they did, it was usually under their breath, or as a punchline to a conversation that wasn't really funny. The ridge was steep, covered in dense pine and birch, with almost no foot traffic. It wasn't even marked on the visitor maps. My supervisor, Glenn, gave the official reason as unstable ground and poor footing. Unofficially, He told me not to go near it. Let the locals whisper, and let the forest keep its secrets, he said once, over coffee. That part of the park don't belong to us. I should have listened. The night I went up there started normal. We'd gotten a call about campers hearing screams like a baby being killed near campsite 7B. That wasn't unusual. Bobcats, foxes, even elk can make some god-awful sounds. But Glenn wasn't around that night, and the other ranger on duty had food poisoning. So I took the call. The GPS coordinates were wrong. They led me past the marked campsites, and halfway up a barely visible trail on the east side of the ridge. The higher I climbed, the quieter the forest became. No bugs, no birds, just wind. And the feeling I wasn't alone. I found the tent, torn, to shreds. Poles snapped like twigs. No blood, but deep gouges in the dirt, like something had dragged the occupants away. I called for backup, but the radio crackled with static. I tried my phone, dead, even though it had 3 bars earlier. I should have turned around. I should have left. Instead, I followed the tracks. They were deep, precise, like canine prints, but massive. Bigger than a bear, with claw marks that pierced the ground. I followed them up the ridge, and that's when I heard the voice. Help. A whisper, too soft, too clear. It came from the trees, just off the trail. Please, help me. A woman's voice, broken, scared. I took a step off the trail, called out, hello, I'm hurt. I'm over here. Then silence. Then something snapped a branch directly behind me. I spun around. Flashlight, sweeping trees, rocks, nothing. Then I saw it. It wasn't in front of me, or even behind. It was above, perched in the crook of a pine, maybe 20 feet up, crouched like a spider. It was huge, covered in black, gray fur that looked wet. Its limbs were long, too long. One arm gripped the trunk while the other dangled, claws twitching. Its head turned sideways, slowly, like it didn't need to, like it just wanted to. Then, it dropped to the ground, silent, and it stood. It looked like a wolf, but taller than me, broad shoulders, eyes too far apart. Its mouth hung open just a little, like it was smiling. Then it opened its mouth wider, unnaturally wide, and spoke. Help me. Same woman's voice, but the lips didn't move right, like it didn't know how. Then it charged. I ran. I don't remember hitting the trail again. I just remember the sound, not of footsteps, but of breath, right behind me. Heavy, steady, too calm for a chase, like it was toying with me. I tripped once, got back up with scraped palms. My flashlight hit a rock and went out. All I had was moonlight and pure panic. Eventually, I saw the trailhead, and the moment I crossed back over the ridgeline, it stopped. I turned. Nothing but the forest was loud. Again, crickets, birds, even a distant owl. Whatever it was, it wouldn't cross back into the park. I filed a report, told Glenn everything. He didn't blink. He just poured me whiskey and said, McCullough Ridge has been bad since before we built roads. Folks go missing there every few years. Always the same story. I asked him why it mimicked voices. He just shook his head. Some say it used to be a man. Some say it's something older. But it knows the shape of fear. It wears it like a mask. They found one of the missing campers 3 days later. Naked. Miles away. Hiding in a drainage pipe. She wouldn't speak. Just kept whispering. It wore my husband's face. It wore his face. They never found the others. I left the Ranger service. 2 weeks later. Moved back to Detroit. Took a job welding. I don't hike anymore, but sometimes, when I'm alone and things get real quiet, I hear that voice again, clear as day. Help me. And I remember what I saw in the trees, and how it smiled with my voice. was 15 when it happened to me. It was the summer after freshman year, and I was staying with my cousin Tyler in Kentucky, near a place called Whitaker Creek, real middle of nowhere country. Gravel roads, gas station 20 minutes away. The woods pressed up so close to the house. It felt like they were listening when you spoke. Tyler's parents were going through a divorce, and my mom thought the trip would be good for both of us. It wasn't. Not after what we saw in those woods. Not after what followed us back. The first time we heard about it was from a neighbor, Mr. Carter, an old Vietnam vet with one eye and a shotgun he carried like a purse. He warned us the second day we were there. "You boys stay out of them trees," he said. "There's something in that creek bottom that ain't right. Seen it once, thought it was the devil." Tyler laughed. "You mean the Dogman?" Carter didn't smile. "I mean something that walks like a man, smells like piss and wet fur, and screams like your mama when she's dying." Then he walked off. I never saw him again. Tyler wanted to investigate, of course. He was 17 and full of Red Bull and bravado. Said we'd go out one night, take some flashlights, maybe film it. Get a viral video, he said. We waited until his mom was passed out drunk on the couch. Then we snuck out with a GoPro, 2 headlamps, and a pocket knife we found in the junk drawer. The trail to Whitaker Creek was thick with roots and mud. We had to climb over to barbed wire fences to get there. By the time we reached the water, it was almost midnight, and quiet too. Quiet. We saw the tracks first, in the creek mud, like wolf prints, but big, bigger than my hand, with claws that dug deep into the earth. Tyler squatted beside them, running his fingers over the impressions. "No way that's a coyote," he whispered. Then we heard the splash upstream, like something massive stepping into the water. Tyler killed his headlamp. We crouched behind a rock and waited. That's when we saw it. At first just a silhouette, 7 feet tall at least, broad shoulders, thick fur. It stepped into the moonlight and sniffed the air. The snout was too long. The arms hung low, almost to the knees. And the eyes, they glowed. Not like reflection. Like light came from them. It dropped to all fours and moved, fast, silent, across the bank. Tyler started filming. I wanted to scream. Then it turned toward us, sniffed, tilted its head, and stood again. Tyler whispered, "Dude, run." And we did. We crashed through the woods, tearing our clothes, tripping over roots. I didn't dare look back, but I swear I could feel it behind us. Not chasing, following. We didn't stop until we were back in the house. Panting, shaking, covered in blood and briar scratches. The GoPro gone. I don't remember it falling, but maybe I dropped it. Tyler was shaking so hard he couldn't speak. We locked every door, pulled the blinds, and sat in the laundry room with kitchen knives until sunrise the next morning. There were prints in the yard. Same ones, same ones, deep, precise, leading up to the back door, and stopping. Tyler's mom never noticed. Too hungover, we wanted to leave, but had no car and no way to explain to our parents without sounding insane. So we stayed. Over the next few nights, things escalated. Scratches on the walls, heavy footsteps on the porch, at 3 a.m. The scent of rot and wet fur in the hallway. One night, I woke up to something tapping on the window. Tap, 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 I pulled the curtain back just an inch. A snout, long, mottled gray, pressed to the glass. It was smiling. I didn't scream. I just sank down beside the bed and cried. The final night, Tyler disappeared. I woke up and his bed was empty. The back door was wide open. I ran into the yard and screamed his name until my throat bled. No answer, just the wind and the forest watching me. They found him too. Days later, naked, miles away, in a deer blind. He had scratches down his arms, bite marks on his shoulder. He wouldn't talk, just curled up and cried when anyone mentioned the woods. His mom checked him into a psych ward. He never came home. I haven't spoken to him since. We send birthday texts. That's it. But sometimes, late at night, I think about the look on that creature's face. It knew what it was doing. It let us see it. Let us live. Because it didn't want to kill us. It wanted to haunt us. And it succeeded. I moved across the country, got therapy, got a job, tried to forget. But some nights I hear tapping, and I don't go near windows anymore. Because I know what I'll see. And I know it never stayed in the woods. It followed me. When I was 13, something happened on my grandfather's farm that I've never told anyone about. Not even him. It was the summer of 2004. My parents were going through a brutal separation, and I got shipped off to live with Grandpa Joe in rural Alabama. He lived on a 100-acre property about 20 miles outside Andalusia. The place was all wheat fields, rusted tools, and a creaky old barn that had been standing since World War II. Grandpa was a man of few words, and even fewer expressions. He spent his days fixing machinery, reading the Bible, and muttering things like "place ain't right" under his breath when he thought I wasn't listening. I didn't ask questions, at least not until the scratching started. It began on the fourth night. I'd just climbed into bed in the loft room above the kitchen when I heard it. Scrape, scrape, like claws on the underside of the floorboards. I froze, holding my breath. It went on for maybe 30 seconds. Then, silence. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I told Grandpa. He didn't even look up from his coffee. "Don't pay it no mind," he said. "Some things down here ain't ours to understand." That was the end of that. But it didn't stop. Every night, the same thing. Scratching, pacing, low guttural sounds. Like a dog with bronchitis. And always directly below me. I checked the crawl space. Nothing. I set out flour to catch footprints. Nothing. And then I made the mistake of going into the barn. Grandpa never locked it, but he always told me to stay out of there. Said the floor was rotted to hell, and I'd break my neck. I believed him, until I heard it again. The scratching. But this time, from inside the barn. I crept out at sunset, carrying one of Grandpa's old flashlights. The barn loomed like a giant corpse in the dying light. Tilted, splintered, ribs of wood showing through the slats. I slid the door open slowly. It moaned loud enough to make me flinch. Dust floated in the beam of my light. There were tools, hay, bales, a rusted tractor, and something else. ATRAPDOOR. It was in the far corner, under an old horse blanket, iron hinges, wood-stained dark, almost black. Scratches covered it, deep gouges, like claws had raked it over and over. And worse, there were handprints, small ones, child-sized, dozens of them, some smeared, some overlapping, all reaching toward the edge, like they'd been dragged. I ran. That night, the scratching was louder, more frantic. I swear I heard breathing and whispering. Not words, just the sound of a voice trying to imitate speech, like it had heard humans talk but didn't quite understand how. I covered my ears and sobbed until morning. I confronted Grandpa the next day, told him everything. He stared at me for a long time, then lit a cigarette and said, "There's things older than fences in these parts. Things that remember before men came walking upright. Some of 'em never left." He paused. "Your grandma heard it too. Back in '81, woke up one night and it was standing at the foot of the bed. I asked him why he never did anything. He looked me in the eye. 'Cause it never came inside. And because it never took more than it gave back. That night, it came to the house. I woke to the sound of the back door creaking open, then footsteps on the kitchen linoleum. I lay frozen as the footsteps moved toward. The stairs slow, heavy, like claws dragging across each step. Then silence. I couldn't breathe. A shadow passed across the gap under the door. Then the knob turned. It didn't open, just rattled. Once, twice, then it stopped. In the morning, Grandpa was sitting on the porch with his shotgun across his knees. He didn't say a word, but I noticed the ground near the barn. More prints. Huge, dog-like, deep as hell, leading from the barn to the house, and then away, back into the trees. That was my last summer there. I never went back. Grandpa died 6 years ago, left me the property. I sold it to some developer who wanted to build hunting cabins. Sometimes, I check the county news. I saw a headline a few months ago. Local teen missing from farm property. Family reports strange claw marks at scene. They don't know what's under that barn. They think it's just old wood and dirt. But I know better, and I still dream of the night it tried the door, and the whispering that almost sounded like my name. One night something happened which I cannot forget. I was 24, fresh out of a breakup, and broke as hell. My cousin Jake offered me a place to crash on his farm in northern Michigan. Middle of nowhere, surrounded by pine forests and cornfields that stretch like oceans under the stars. Stay as long as you want, he said. We've got room and beer. Sounded good enough. For the first week, it actually was. I helped with chores, stacked firewood, drank beer on the porch with Jake until late, talking about nothing. Then I heard it. The howl. It was around midnight. Long, drawn out, deep in pitch, almost like it was pulled from the throat of something that used to be human. It echoed through the corn like a scream dragged across the sky. I froze. Jake looked at me, wide-eyed. That's back, he whispered. What is? He shook his head. Just don't go in the corn at night. He didn't say anything else. Just went inside and locked the doors. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I asked Jake about it. He avoided my questions, muttered something about old stories and things best left alone. I pressed him. He finally caved. Back in the 60s, this land belonged to the Ottawa tribe. They used to say a creature lived in the woods, something that walked like a man but hunted like a wolf. Called it the shadow dog. Said it only came when people disrespected the land. When blood had been spilled. Blood? I asked. Jake nodded toward the field. That corn was grown over a burial site. I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. The next few nights were quiet, but then I started seeing it. Not full on. Just glimpses. Something tall, dark and fast, standing at the edge of the corn rows just after sunset, watching. I thought. It was paranoia. Too many beers, too many stories. Until I saw the prints. They showed up behind the barn one morning. Massive, canine, but the stride was all wrong. Too long, too upright, like something was walking on two legs. Jake saw them too. He didn't say anything. Just spat in the dirt and muttered, "It's looking for something." That night, I sat on the porch with a flashlight and a bat. Around 2 a.m., the wind stopped. The cicadas went silent. Then I heard it, my name, whispered, from inside the cornfield. I nearly dropped the flashlight. "Jake," I called out. No answer. Then again louder. "Mark." My blood froze. It wasn't Jake's voice. It was deeper, wet, sounding, like it was spoken through teeth, too large for the mouth. I backed toward the house, but then I saw it, just at the edge of the corn. 7 feet tall, fur matted and dark, legs like a dog, but arms like a man. Long jointed fingers, and a snout filled with yellow teeth, and eyes, glowing orange. It stepped forward. I slammed the door shut, and locked it. The scratching came an hour later, at the back. Door slow, deliberate, like it was letting me know it could get in if it wanted to. Jake didn't sleep either. We sat in the living room, with hunting rifles across our laps. "It knows your name," he said, voice hollow. "How?" I whispered. Jake just shook his head. "Because now, you've seen it." The next day, we packed. I was ready to leave. Jake said I shouldn't go. Not once it marked you. Running didn't help, but I had to try. He gave me a small pouch filled with something that smelled like dirt and sage. "Ottawa charm," he said. "Might buy you time." I left that afternoon. Made it halfway to Lansing before I heard it again. My name. This time from the woods beside the road. I never made it back to Detroit. Car died on a back road near Petoskey. No cell service. Walked for hours before finding a ranger station. They said someone found the car. Doors open. Engine cold. No signs of foul play. I told them I got lost. Didn't mention the creature. They wouldn't have believed me anyway. Now I live in Phoenix. No forests. No cornfields. No howls in the night. But it doesn't matter. Because sometimes, when I'm about to fall asleep, I hear it again, just outside the window. My name, Mark, whispered through teeth and hunger, and I know it's still looking, because I saw it, and it saw me. I was 19 when I learned monsters are real. That summer, I was working as a trail maintenance volunteer in Michigan's Manistee National Forest. I had just finished my first year of college, and the idea of spending 3 months outdoors, away from phones and distractions, sounded like therapy. The world was loud. The forest was quiet, or so I thought. The job was simple: hike, repair signage, clear brush, and make notes of anything unusual. I was stationed near the Pine River corridor, miles from anything resembling civilization, with only a two-way radio and an old canvas tent for company. I kept a journal, partly for documentation and partly to keep myself sane. The first 2 weeks were uneventful, even peaceful. I'd wake early, stretch, drink terrible instant coffee, and walk miles of trail with only my thoughts and the occasional deer for company. The forest was full of life: birds, squirrels, the occasional fox. I'd hear owls at night, sometimes coyotes in the distance. It was honest solitude then. The howling started. The first time I heard it, I was brushing my teeth by the river, around 10 p.m. It wasn't a coyote. I've heard plenty of coyotes. This was deeper, longer, angrier. A single, guttural howl that echoed through the trees and stopped me cold. I turned off my headlamp and just listened. Nothing. Silence. The kind that makes your heartbeat feel like a drum solo. The next night, it came back. Closer. On the third night, it circled my tent. I didn't sleep. I lay there with my Leatherman in one hand and a hatchet in the other, trying to convince myself it was a wolf. But wolves don't walk on 2 legs, and wolves don't laugh, because that's what I heard, after the third long howl, as it passed, close to the tent. I swear on everything, I heard a breathy, wheezing chuckle, like it was playing with me. The next morning, I found prints, massive ones. At first I thought it had to be a prank, some local messing with the new guy, but the stride was too long. The depth of the print, it would take hundreds of pounds of pressure. It looked like a wolf's paw, but elongated, with claw marks far too wide apart. There were only 2 types of prints: left, right, like a human's gait. I radioed the ranger station and asked if they had large predators on file near Pine River. They said no. I asked about pranksters. They told me no one was up there but me. I didn't leave, though maybe I should have. But I was young, dumb, and too stubborn to back out. I moved my tent deeper into the woods, off the trail, thinking maybe I could shake it off. That night, I heard breathing. just outside the nylon wall. Slow, heavy breaths. I held my breath until I nearly passed out. It stood there for what felt like an hour. Then came a scratch. Gentle, deliberate. 3 long strokes against the side of the tent, followed by another breath. Hot, close. When I finally dared to unzip the flap at sunrise, nothing was there, except claw marks in the dirt and a deep indentation, like something had crouched beside me all night. I packed up and hiked 10 miles to the fire tower, the only place with a lamp. I told the supervisor I needed out. Family emergency, heat stroke, whatever lie it took. He looked me over once and nodded like he'd seen this before. "Did you hear it? Or see it?" he asked. I hesitated. "Heard it." He just sighed. "You're lucky I didn't ask what he meant. I haven't gone back. That journal I kept, I burned it. Too many nights, I'd wake up remembering that laugh. Low, mocking, almost human. I used to think monsters were myths. Now I think they're just really good at hiding." One night something happened that I cannot forget. It was the winter of 2017, and I had just gone through a messy divorce. I was living in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, in a small town called Crystal Falls, renting a rundown cabin off season. To be alone, I needed time. Time to scream, drink, cry, whatever the hell it took to piece myself back together. My nearest neighbor was a retired Navy vet named Russell, the kind of guy who had a weather-beaten face and stories he never finished telling. The cabin I stayed in used to be his brother's, but he'd passed away years ago. Russell didn't like to talk about how just told me to stay indoors after dark, like it was a rule, not advice. I chalked it up to old man paranoia and made it a point to take walks at night, just to feel the air on my face. That week, the air was bitter, the snow crusted and sharp, and the woods didn't feel like they wanted me there. On the 4th night, I decided to walk to the frozen lake just behind the tree line. The moon was out in full, silver, light spilling over the snow like milk. I didn't bring a flashlight, didn't need one. I followed the old trail behind the cabin with my boots crunching the crusted snow, breath puffing out in little clouds. For the first time in a long time, I felt okay. And then I heard it. Not a howl, no, a growl. A deep, guttural thing, wet and gravelly, like someone was gurgling gravel through a throat full of tar. I stopped walking, my ears strained. The wind died down completely, like the forest was holding its breath. Then, something moved across the path about 20 yards ahead of me. Fast, big, the kind of big that makes you question physics. I didn't get a full look, just a flash of motion. Tall, dark, hunched over, but fast as hell. Too fast for something that size. I backed up slowly. I hadn't brought my phone or anything to defend myself. Just me and the trees and that thing. The growl came again, behind me this time. I spun around. Nothing, just trees and shadows. Then it stepped out. I didn't see it clearly at first. The snow, the dark, the movement, it all blurred. But then, it stopped. And I swear my heart just quit for a few beats. It stood upright. 7, maybe 8 feet tall. Thick, matted fur. Shoulders broad like a linebacker's. Its hands, yes, hands, hung too low. Fingers ending in claws, longer than a car. Key. But the worst part was the face. It wasn't a wolf's face. Not entirely. More like a hybrid of man and beast, with glowing yellow eyes, and a jaw that stretched open in a grin that didn't match any emotion a human could feel. Like it knew something I didn't. Like it was enjoying this. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I just stood there as it took a single heavy step forward, and then, behind me, a gunshot. A loud ringing crack that echoed through the woods. The creature flinched, Not fear, annoyance. It stared into the darkness past me, then dropped to all fours and ran. Not walked, not fled. It charged back into the trees with a speed that shouldn't be possible. I turned around and saw Russell, shotgun in hand, eyes locked on the trees. He didn't speak, just nodded toward the trail and walked me back to my cabin. Inside, by the fire, he poured us each a whiskey and said, "You're not the first to see it, and you won't be the last. But if you're smart, you'll be the last one to talk about it." I never did, not for years. But I've heard stories, more than I'd like to admit. People vanish in those woods, especially in the off-season, and they always have a few things in common. Snow, silence, and something big with yellow eyes. I left Crystal Falls in the spring. I've never gone back. I still have dreams, though, of that face, that impossible grin, and the growl that says, "I let you go once." When I was 12, I heard the whistle. It was the kind of sound that doesn't belong in the woods. Not a bird, not a man. Something in between, off, broken, almost like it was imitating something it didn't fully understand. My grandparents owned a small farm in eastern Kentucky, backed right up against Daniel Boone National Forest. They took care of me every summer while my parents worked the city grind. I loved those months more than anything. No alarms, no traffic, just me, the open land, and long hikes in the woods. One morning, my grandpa told me I could take the ATV down the old hunting trail. He'd cleared it years ago, but no one really used it anymore. I was excited, felt grown up, like I was finally being trusted with something bigger than chores and slingshots. The trail led deep into the tree line, winding past dry creek beds and collapsing fences that hadn't seen repair in decades. It was peaceful at first, a little eerie, maybe, but the way all forests are when you're alone long enough to hear your own heartbeat. And then I heard it, that whistle, not close, just enough to freeze me. 2 notes, spaced perfectly, high, low. It came from the left side of the trail. I cut the engine and listened. Nothing. Then it came again, from the right. That was the moment I felt something change. Not the air, not the light, me. My stomach clenched up, and my skin crawled like my body knew something my brain hadn't figured out yet. I turned the ATV around and booked it back to the farm. Later that evening, after dinner, I asked my grandfather about the whistle. He looked up from his beer, and I'll never forget the way his eyes changed. His shoulders dropped, like someone had laid a heavy coat across them. Then he said, "You didn't whistle back, did you?" I shook my head. He nodded. "Good. That means it might not come tonight." He wouldn't explain further, just locked the doors and put a chair under the handle. He even brought the dogs inside, something he never did. They spent the whole night pacing and growling at the back door. I barely slept. I stared out the window, heart hammering, until around 2 a.m. when I saw it. A silhouette, tall, wide, hunched, standing at the edge of the woods. Watching, it didn't move. It didn't call. It just stood there. The dogs whimpered and backed away from the door. I crept closer to the window, and then it stepped forward, just enough for the moonlight to catch its face. It wasn't a bear. Its legs bent wrong, digitigrade like a dog's hind legs, but longer. Its chest was massive, human, shaped but too narrow. Its arms hung low, hands dragging in the grass. But its face, God, its face, elongated lupin, but with human eyes. It saw me, it knew I was looking, and then it smiled, lips peeling back over. Massive teeth. Not a threat, a promise. Then came the whistle. High, low. I ducked. When I looked again, it was gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Neither did Grandpa. The next day, He took me to church, unprompted, and told me the hunting trail was off limits from then on. Some things out there whistle to be invited in, he said. And if they like the way you look, they'll come back anyway. Years have passed. Grandpa's gone now, buried under a stone etched with Psalm 23. But I still remember that whistle. And last winter, while camping in Tennessee with my girlfriend, I heard it again. Same notes, same timing. High, low. I told her to get in the truck and drive. She thought I was crazy. She doesn't anymore, because when we got home that night, our front porch light was busted, and in the snow just off the steps were footprints too big to be human, too heavy for any animal. Just left right, like something walked upright, something that remembers me. I was 19 when I learned to stop following tracks. It was supposed to be a weekend hunting trip with my older cousin Shane. He was 27, ex-army, and had the kind of voice that made you listen whether you wanted to or not. He'd grown up in West Virginia, near Monongahela National Forest, and knew the woods like they were an extension of his body. It was November, cold, sharp cold, where even your breath feels solid. We hiked deep into the trees, past the usual trails, past the signs, into places where the forest hadn't heard human voices in years. The first day was uneventful. No deer, but plenty of squirrel and rabbit sign. We made camp near an old stream, and set up a fire. Shane told me stories I half believed, phantom lights in the woods, a herd of deer found gutted and hung from trees, like someone arranged them on display. He said it all, with a grin, like it was just for fun. But his eyes were different. His eyes weren't joking. That night, around 1 a.m., I woke up to the sound of crunching snow. I thought maybe Shane was taking a leak, but when I unzipped the tent and peeked out, he was still asleep beside me. The fire was low, throwing weak shadows across the trees, and something was moving out there, slow, heavy, step, pause, step. I held my breath. The steps circled the camp, once, twice. Then they stopped, just outside the firelight. I saw a shape, not quite human, too tall, broad across the shoulders. Its head was too big, and it moved its arms like they were too long for its body. I couldn't make out a face, but I could hear it breathing, low, wet, and gurgling, like it had fluid in its lungs. It just stood there, watching. I woke Shane quietly. When he saw the thing, he froze. Then he whispered, "Don't move, don't talk, don't look it in the eyes." We stayed still for nearly an hour, then it left, just walked away into the trees. I couldn't sleep. Shane didn't even try. At dawn, we packed everything up and started heading back. But Shane kept looking over his shoulder, like we were being watched. Around noon, we found tracks in the snow, fresh ones, huge. They looked like canine prints, but wider, deeper, and they walked in a straight line, left, right, not like a dog, not like any animal I'd ever seen, upright, and they weren't heading away. They were following our trail back to camp. We hiked faster, no talking, no breaks. I remember my legs burning, my throat dry, the sound of wind through the trees suddenly sounding like whispers. We finally made it back to the car by late afternoon. Shane didn't say a word until we were halfway down the mountain road. Then he said that thing wasn't a bear, wasn't a wolf. It was a dogman. He said it like he was confessing. I asked him what that meant, and he said, "They hunt the old paths, the parts of the forest people forget. They're smart, and if you see one, odds are it led you." That night, he poured salt along the windowsills of his house. We never talked about it again, but 2 months later, he moved out of state. No notice, no goodbye, just gone. I stayed in contact with his sister. She told me he left everything behind, except a single duffel bag, a rifle, and a box of trail cameras. And sometimes, when I go hiking alone and see old animal tracks in the snow, I turn around, because I remember what he said. Don't follow tracks, not if they're too big, not if they walk like a man, not if they vanish mid-stride, like something stepped off the earth itself. It started with a smell I couldn't explain. I was 34 at the time, recently divorced, and house sitting for my brother while he and his wife honeymooned in Spain. Their place sat on 5 wooded acres in rural Alabama, tucked back behind a long gravel driveway with nothing but pines and night sounds for miles. At first, I enjoyed the quiet. I needed it. The city had become too loud. My apartment too full of memories I didn't want. Out there, it felt like I could finally breathe, until the smell. It was like rotting meat mixed with wet dog and something chemical, like battery acid. It hit me on the 3rd night, just after midnight, while I was reading on the back porch. I remember freezing with my book open, nose wrinkled, eyes scanning the tree line. Nothing moved. No wind, not even crickets. Just that heavy, sour stench. Like something had died nearby, but hadn't stopped moving. I went inside, locked the door, and told myself it was a dead animal. Maybe a raccoon or a deer. But even as I fell asleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was out there hadn't been lying still. The next day, I found the tracks large, deep, wider than my boots. 5 toes, no claw marks. They weren't shaped like a bear's or a cat's. These were wrong, almost human, but exaggerated, like something had tried to mock a human foot, or like evolution had gone off track halfway through. They circled the house. I found them in the red clay near the garage, under the bedroom window, even at the edge of the porch steps. That night, the smell returned, stronger. I was brushing my teeth when I heard a soft thud against the siding, like someone had leaned their weight into the wall. I turned off the bathroom light, heart pounding, and moved to the living room, careful not to make noise. Something was pacing outside. Heavy steps, slow, measured. Then came the scratching, long, deliberate strokes on the back door. Not frantic, curious. I wanted to scream. Instead, I grabbed the poker from the fireplace and stood in the hallway, frozen. The scratching stopped. I stood there for nearly 30 minutes, barely breathing. Then the smell faded. The next morning, I found fur, tufts of it caught in the back fence. Coarse, black, and too long for any dog. The posts were cracked, as if something had tried to squeeze through, and nearly succeeded. I called my brother, tried to stay calm. He laughed it off. Probably coyotes, he said. You're just not used to country life. But I was. I grew up in the woods. I know what coyotes sound like. I know what they smell like. This wasn't that. On the 5th night, I set up my brother's trail cam. I tied it to a tree facing the back deck and left some food out. Raw chicken in a cooler. Left open just enough to let the smell out. At 3:12 a.m., I woke to a bang. Like the cooler had been hurled against the house. I didn't look out the window. I didn't move. I waited until morning. The trail cam was gone, not ripped off, unscrewed. I found the mount, still bolted to the tree, but the camera was gone. That was the day I drove into town and bought a hotel room. I couldn't stay there anymore. I was supposed to sit another week, but I left a note, fed the dog, and bailed. A month later, my brother called me. He sounded different, shaky, like he hadn't slept. Said something was killing deer around the property. Said he'd found one strung up in the trees, like it had been placed there, blood drained, eyes missing. Said their dog was growling at nothing for hours on end. Then he asked, "You didn't see anything while you were here, did you?" I lied. I said no, because if I said yes, if I told him what I really saw on the 6th night, just before I left, he might not sleep again either. I saw it at the tree line. Tall, upright, broad, chested, snout like a wolf, but longer, black fur, matted and filthy. Fingers, not paws, with joints that bent too far backward, like it had never been meant to stand still. Its eyes reflected amber in the porch light. It stared at me, then it crouched, like a dog about to pounce, but it didn't. It just watched, and I knew, somehow, that it wanted me to know it had let me leave. It could have come in, but it didn't. Not yet. When I was 11, my grandfather told me never to whistle in the woods. He said it draws things you don't want attention from. Things that look like wolves but walk like men. I used to laugh at him. I'd grown up in northern Michigan, surrounded by woods, old stories, and the kind of silence that creeps into your bones. But I was a modern kid. iPod, dirt bikes, Netflix. What did I care about backwoods, superstition? I should have listened. It didn't happen until I was 29. I'd come back to help clean out my grandfather's cabin after he passed. The property sat on 30 acres of pine and aspen, untouched and unmowed. The grass was thigh-high, the trail to the back fence barely visible, and everything smelled of damp earth and dust. It was meant to be a quiet weekend, one last visit to a place that meant something once. But the forest had changed. Or maybe I had. The first day I walked the perimeter like I always did when I was a kid. Fence was mostly intact, save for the northern edge where a few slats had fallen inward. Something had dug beneath it, a burrow, maybe, or a collapsed root. I told myself I'd patch it in the morning. That night, I sat on the back porch with a beer, remembering the way Grandpa used to whittle little bears for me out of pine scraps. The air was thick with insects. Distant howls rose out of the tree line. Not coyotes, not dogs. Low, drawn out, like something was calling. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was nothing. But around midnight, I heard footsteps outside the cabin. Not animal steps. 2 feet. 2 deliberate, slow-pacing footsteps, just outside the window. I froze. Then I made the mistake of whistling. It wasn't intentional, just an old tune, a nervous habit. The footsteps stopped, and the world held its breath. A moment later, something knocked on the wall, not scratched. Knocked, 3 steady hits, just behind my head. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I remembered what Grandpa said. If you call it, you invite it. If you answer it, you bind it. I slept with a knife in my hand, and the lights on. The next morning, I found prints in the soil near the woodpile. Deep, heavy impressions. 5 digits. Pads like a canine, but wider, thicker. The kind of track you don't want to see twice. The woodpile had been torn apart. Logs were scattered 20 feet from where they had been stacked, and something had urinated on the side of the shed. Something foul, oily, almost metallic, smelling. I didn't leave. I should have. But I told myself I was imagining it, letting old stories poison my logic. I worked the rest of the day cleaning out old boxes and folding up bedding. But I avoided the windows. That night, it returned. I was dozing on the couch when I heard it breathing outside the screen door. Low, heavy, rhythmic. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. Then the screen creaked. I glanced out of the corner of my eye and saw the silhouette, massive, at least 7, maybe 8 feet tall, dog-like head, long arms, with elbows that bent the wrong way, fingers wrapped around the screen frame. It was sniffing. The screen door handle moved. I gripped the knife. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it would hear. Then, as suddenly as it had come, it stepped back into the shadows. Not running, not afraid, like it was finished. I left before sunrise. Didn't even pack my clothes. Just got in the car and drove until I saw pavement and other people. 3 weeks later, I got a call from the county sheriff. He said there'd been reports of something breaking into barns on the outskirts, livestock mutilated, fences smashed inward. He asked if I saw anything unusual during my visit. I said no, but I knew what it was. I'd whistled, I'd called it, and it found me. When I was 16, I had a part-time job helping a family friend, Mr. Rake, manage his hunting cabin deep in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It was mostly grunt work, chopping wood, clearing brush, checking camera traps. He paid me under the table and let me stay in the small bunkhouse near the back of his property. To a teenager trying to escape a messy home life, it felt like freedom. That was, until the forest decided to watch me back. It started with the trail cams. We had about 6 of them set up across 40 acres. They were motion activated, mostly used for tracking deer. Every week or so, we'd swap the SD cards and check the footage back at the cabin. One morning, Mr. Rake was flipping through the frames when he stopped dead. "That's not a bear," he said, frowning. I looked. The image was blurry, shot in the dead of night. A tall figure, covered in what looked like matted fur, stood just past the tree line, upright, shoulders hunched. It had ears like a German shepherd, and eyes that reflected the infrared light, twin orbs like hot coals. "It's probably a trick of the camera," I said. "Could be someone in a suit." He didn't answer. Just saved the image, pulled the card out, and burned it in the fire. "You didn't see this," he said. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing twigs snapping outside the bunkhouse. At around 2 a.m., something brushed the side of the structure. Not hard, more like a testing stroke. Curious. Then I heard breathing. It was the kind of breathing you can feel before you hear it. Like heat behind your neck. Slow, heavy, wet. I held my breath and waited. A minute passed, then 2. Silence again. I finally dared to peek through the cracked curtain. What I saw is carved into my mind like a scar. It stood just beyond the firewood pile. Tall, too tall. Its limbs were wrung, long and sinewy, with hands too human to belong to anything that walked, on 4 legs. Its head was the worst part, elongated, canine, but not. Its snout twitched. It sniffed the air, and then, as if it sensed me watching, it turned its head toward the window. Those eyes, they weren't angry, they weren't even curious. They knew me. I slammed the curtain shut, grabbed my flashlight, and turned every light in the bunkhouse on. I didn't sleep until the sun rose. When I told Mr. Rake what I saw, he didn't laugh, didn't scoff. He just handed me a warm mug and said something that still makes my skin crawl. "They know when you see them. Now it'll watch for you." I quit the job 2 days later. Told my mom I wanted to spend more time studying. I tried to forget. But you don't forget something like that, especially not when it starts showing up elsewhere. 2 years later, I was at college downstate when I found a claw mark on my dorm window. We were on the 2nd floor, no trees nearby. It was 3 slashes deep, clean, deliberate. I started keeping the blinds shut, stopped going on hikes, stopped talking about it. Then last year, I got a letter, no return address. Inside was a single photo, printed in black and white, low. Race. It was a picture of me standing at the lake behind Rake's cabin, and the trees behind me. It stood, watching. I burned the photo. But I know it's not done. They say it walks upright. I say it remembers. 25 when it happened. It was supposed to be a short sabbatical, just a few weeks away from the noise of the city. A friend of mine, Mason, offered his family's unused cabin up north, tucked between old mining trails and dense forest land near Ironwood, Michigan. It bordered nothing but state land and a shallow creek that curved for miles through the trees. A perfect place, he said, to clear my head, and for the first week, it was. I slept more than I had in months. I read books. I made fires at night. I journaled. The silence of the place was rich and complete, a kind of hush that you only get when you're truly removed from people. And the woods didn't feel threatening, not at first, until I walked to the creek. It was mid-afternoon. I'd followed a deer path down a slope, expecting to find a spot to sketch. Instead, I found a dead fawn. Its back had been ripped open. Not eaten, just torn. As if something powerful had wanted it dead, but not for food. I crouched to look closer, but stopped when I saw the prints around it. Not paw prints, feet barefoot, huge, deep in the mud, with long toes, some with cracked claws, human-like, but distorted, like someone had tried to copy a person's foot and gotten it wrong. I took a photo with my phone, but the moment I stood up, I heard something crash through the trees upstream. Then came the smell, wet fur and blood, and something sickly sweet, like rotting fruit. I turned and walked fast. I didn't run, not yet. Not until I heard the first snap of a branch too thick to break under a deer. I sprinted the whole way back to the cabin. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the way the prints had circled the fawn. How many there were? At least 3, maybe 4. I stayed up with a fire going and a flashlight in my hand. Every so often, I swore I heard something moving in the woods, just beyond the edge of the clearing. Whispers, or something like them. 2 nights later, it came closer. I'd fallen asleep in the armchair with my headphones on. Something pulled, one out, pulled, not yanked, as if it had fingers. I jolted up and saw the front door was open, just an inch. I had locked it. There were wet prints on the hardwood floor, leading back outside. That was the first night I heard it howl. Not a wolf, not a coyote. It started as a low growl and pitched up into something guttural, almost painful. It went on for nearly 15 seconds and ended in a choking, rasping cough, as though something was struggling to sound human and couldn't quite get there. I didn't sleep again after that. I started keeping a fire going at all times, and I nailed the door shut. A day later, I tried to leave. My car wouldn't start. The hood had been torn open, not popped, ripped. The battery was gone. I knew then I was trapped. For the next 2 nights, it circled the cabin. I never saw it up close, just shapes, motion, a shadow that passed across the windows faster than it should have. I counted at least 2, maybe more, but one of them always stayed closer. It wasn't trying to get in, it was waiting, and I think, watching. On the 4th night, it spoke. I was sitting on the floor, flashlight in hand, when I heard it say my name, not a whisper, not a voice exactly. It was as if it forced the shape of my name through something that wasn't made for words. Wet, wrong. My name came out broken and stretched. It wasn't calling. It was mocking. That was when I broke. I ran into the woods, desperate to reach the road 5 miles away. I ran blind. Didn't take supplies. Didn't care. I ran until I couldn't hear it anymore. But I never made it to the road. I woke up the next morning, back in the cabin. No idea how I'd gotten there. The door was closed again. Everything exactly where it was, except on the table. There was something new, a piece of deer antler, freshly broken, and beside it, a single paw print burned into the wood, charred and like it had been pressed with something scalding. I didn't wait. I ran down the mountain trail until a passing logging crew found me. They drove me into town. I didn't say much. I couldn't. I stayed with a friend for a month after that. My mind wouldn't stop replaying the way it had said my name. I still hear it sometimes when the house is too quiet. That guttural attempt at language. That sickly, sweet smell. I asked Mason if his family ever experienced anything strange up at the cabin. He went silent, then said, "You went near the creek, didn't you?" I haven't gone near woods since. Whatever's out there, it waits, it watches, and if you hear it speak, it already knows you. One evening I was dizzy, and I blamed the smoke. Wildfires had been chewing through northern Arizona for 3 weeks straight. I was part of a 4-man Forest Service crew, stationed at a remote fire watch tower near Kaibab National Forest, way out where the pines thin into red rock and silence. They told us the worst had passed. They were wrong. My partner that night was Reggie, a quiet ex-Marine with a buzzcat and a scar across his cheek he never explained. The other 2 guys, Clay and Hollister, had gone into town to restock supplies and grab hot food. That left me and Reggie with the tower, the ridge, and the distant glow of firelight smearing the horizon like war paint. As the sun dropped, I started feeling off, nauseous, lightheaded, ears ringing. I figured it was the elevation, or the smoke that never fully left the air. Then Reggie said something that made the hair on my arms stand up. "You see it too?" I followed his gaze. Down in the tree line, barely visible in the fading light, something was standing just past the first row of burned-out trees. Too tall, too still. It didn't move like a bear. It didn't feel like a man, and it didn't blink. We watched it for maybe 10 minutes. It never moved. Then it was just gone, like it blinked, out of existence. We didn't talk much that night. Just sat in the watchtower, rifles within reach, waiting for something to happen, but nothing did, until midnight. The radios crackled, dead static. Then, help me. It was faint, garbled, but clear enough. "Clay," I said. "Hollister." "Number." Answered that. Then again, "Help me. It's in the trees." Reggie grabbed the receiver and barked into it. "Where are you?" Silence, then screaming, then static, and then nothing. We geared up and started down the trail toward the trailhead where they were supposed to return. Flashlights, radios, Reggie's .308, my Glock. We moved fast, and then the forest changed. The air went still. No insects, no wind, no distant crackle of fire, and the smell, like wet fur and copper. Burnt hair. It turned my stomach. Reggie stopped and pointed. Up ahead, just off the trail, was the SUV. Lights off, doors wide open, and blood. Lots of blood, but no bodies, no tracks leading away. Just deep impressions in the dirt, like claws, but not quite right. Not animal, not man. We backed away, slow and quiet. That's when we heard it. A howl, not high pitched, not wolf-like. It sounded wrong, like something imitating a howl, but not understanding how to make it. It rose and dropped in pitch, like a dying modem, and it was close. We bolted. Didn't even make it 200 yards before Reggie stopped cold and whispered, "Don't move." I turned and saw it, standing on the trail, not 20 feet away, 7, maybe 8 feet tall, hunched forward, dog-like head, long arms with human elbows, covered in fur but with patches of mottled gray, pink skin like it had been burned. It was sniffing the air. Then it said my name, Chris, in Clay's voice. I nearly dropped my flashlight. Reggie raised his rifle. It didn't flinch, just stepped sideways off the trail and vanished into the dark. We made it back to the tower before sunrise, locked the hatch, sat there in silence until morning. A search party found the SUV. No signs of Clay or Hollister, just some claw marks on the inside roof of the truck. No one believed us. They blamed the fire, or smoke inhalation, PTSD. We were reassigned, told not to talk about it, but sometimes, late at night, my radio still crackles, and sometimes I hear it again. That voice, help me. And I remember the thing standing in the smoke, wearing my friend's voice like a mask. I was 17 when it happened to me. My uncle Randy owned a stretch of land deep in the Kentucky hills, about an hour from Pineville. Place was off-grid, no cell service, no neighbors, no roads in or out, unless you counted the old logging trail that washed out every spring. I'd just gotten into a fight with my mom, something dumb about grades or curfews, and she packed me up and dumped me with Randy for the summer. Hard work'll fix your attitude, she said. Turns out, hard work doesn't fix much when you're being watched from the woods. Randy lived in a cabin he built himself, the kind of place with a rain barrel, an outhouse, and a .22 always within arm's reach. He was a Vietnam vet, and it showed. Never smiled, barely talked, always looked like he was listening for something far off. We'd spend the days chopping wood or clearing brush. At night, he'd sit on the porch with a lantern and that rifle across his lap. One night, I asked what he was always waiting for. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "There's things out here that don't fear men, and they sure as hell don't fear God." I thought he was just being dramatic. I was wrong. The first sign came a week in. We were working near the West Ridge, pulling fallen logs from a gully, when I noticed a strange smell. Wet dog, copper, rotting meat. Then I saw the deer, or what was left of it. It had been shredded, not eaten, not hunted, just ripped apart. Head twisted clean off, legs scattered, organs untouched. Randy stared at it for a long time, then said something I'll never forget. "It's back." That night, he double-bolted the doors and set tripwires around the cabin, gave me a hunting knife, and told me to keep it close, even while sleeping. I asked what we were protecting against. He stared out the window and said, "I once saw it carry off a mule in its jaws like a dog with a slipper." The howl started the next night, low and long, like something calling out, not just howling to the moon, something searching. Then the smell came back, but this time, it was closer. I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of footsteps on the roof. Slow, deliberate, heavy. I lay frozen in bed, barely breathing, until I heard something even worse. Breathing, right outside my window. I rolled over and peeked through the curtain, and locked eyes with something I will never forget. 7 feet tall, standing upright, covered in dark fur, a dog's face, long snout, pointed ears, but human eyes, intelligent eyes, and it was smiling at me. I screamed. Randy burst into the room, rifle in hand, but by the time he threw the door open, it was gone. Only footprints in the dirt outside. But here's the thing, they weren't dog prints. They were human, but too long, too wide, too wrong. Randy didn't sleep after that. Neither did I. The next morning we found the tripwires had been snapped, but not broken. Untied like someone or something had carefully disarmed them. The attacks started that night. First, the generator was torn to pieces. Then the chickens vanished. No blood, no feathers, just gone. Then the whispering started, voices outside the cabin, calling our names, mine first, then Randy's, then my mother's. But it wasn't her voice, it just sounded like it. Like something had heard her once and was trying to copy her, mock her. I cried. I'm not ashamed to say it. Randy just kept loading shells into his gun. The final night, it came to the door, not scratching, knocking, 3 slow, heavy knocks, then silence, then a voice. "Let me in, boy. I'm hungry." It was my voice. Randy fired. Through the door, something screamed, And then the woods went still. Dead still. No bugs. No wind. Not even the trees moved. We left at dawn, never went back. Randy sold the land to a mining company. They bulldozed the cabin, paved a road. I keep an eye on the news so far. No missing people, but sometimes, late at night, I still hear those knocks in my dreams. And sometimes, just sometimes, I wake up to a smell, like wet fur, copper, and rotting meat. When I was young, maybe around 12, my dad took me on a hunting trip I still dream about. It was October, cold mornings, warm afternoons, trees bleeding color into the hills. We drove his rusted F-150 deep into the Allegheny Mountains, somewhere off Dead Elk Ridge, a place he said his granddad used to hunt back in the 30s. There was no cell reception, no map marker, just a rotted out sign half buried in moss that said Benton Logging Camp EST, 1902. I remember being excited, scared, too, but mostly thrilled to finally be doing something manly. Just me and Dad, rifles slung over our backs, boots crunching over frost, bitten leaves. I didn't know then that I'd never forget what we saw out there, and I didn't know that what followed us back would haunt us both until the day he died. The camp was barely more than ruins, a collapsed bunkhouse, an outhouse full of spiders, and a half-standing sawmill with rusted tools still hanging from the walls. Dad said we'd stay 2 nights, hunt deer, maybe a black bear if we were lucky. The first day was quiet, cold, peaceful, but that night, something woke me. Not a sound, an absence, no owls, no wind. Not even the creek that gurgled all day. Everything had stopped. I sat up in my sleeping bag, shivering. Then I saw the shadow, just beyond our campfire light. It was standing there, watching us. I tried to whisper to Dad, but he was already awake, staring straight at it. I remember his hand slowly reaching for the rifle beside him. Then the shadow moved, not away, not toward us. It crawled sideways, on 2 legs, but with a motion that reminded me of broken machinery, jerky, unnatural. Then it vanished behind the trees. Dad didn't sleep the rest of that night. At dawn, he told me we were leaving, no discussion. I asked why. He just said, that wasn't a bear, but the trail back had changed. I swear to you, it wasn't the same path. We followed our boot prints for miles, until they just stopped, like we'd vanished in the middle of the woods and come back in the wrong place. Dad didn't say a word, but I saw how his hands trembled. That afternoon, we found something in the snow, dusted dirt, a track, huge, dog-like, but wrong. It had 5 toes, each too long to human. And the claws had dug in deep, like it had stopped mid-stride and waited, watching that night. We didn't light a fire. We stayed inside the ruined bunkhouse, rifles across our chests, and it came back. Not close, just far enough for us to see the silhouette against the moonlight, pacing along the tree line, circling, and it made a sound I'll never forget. Not a growl, not a howl, just breathing deep, wet, like it had lungs too big for its chest. Then it whispered, "Boy," right outside the wall behind me. My dad screamed and fired. The thing didn't even run, just laughed like it had been waiting for us to fight back. Then silence. We left before dawn, hiked 10 miles without stopping. Found a road we didn't recognize, flagged down a trucker who didn't ask questions, just stared at our faces like he knew. We never talked about it. Dad drank more after that. By the time I was in college, he was a shell of himself. He died last year, liver failure. When I was cleaning out his garage, I found a journal inside. One line repeated over and over. It followed us back. It remembers my name. I can hear it at night. I still live in the city, still sleep with the lights on, because sometimes, late at night, I hear something outside my apartment window. Not growling, not howling, just breathing. And once, just once, I heard it whisper through the vent, "Boy." One night something happened which I cannot forget. It was late August. I was house-sitting for my cousin Jen and her husband Matt while they took their 2 kids to Myrtle Beach. They had a farmhouse way out in rural Wisconsin, land that had been in Matt's family since the late 1800s. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. Feed the chickens, keep the dog company, make sure the pipes didn't freeze. And yet, something about that place made the hair on my arms stand up from the minute I arrived. It was the barn, mostly old, leaning, long, abandoned. Even the animals avoided it. The dog, Bruno, would bark at it, but never go near. And every time I glanced toward it, I felt like someone was watching me from inside the loft. By the 3rd night, I stopped looking. I remember it was storming that evening. The wind had picked up hard, whipping tree branches against the windows. Rain pelted the tin roof like buckshot. Bruno was pacing the kitchen, tail down, ears flat, growling low in his throat. I figured it was thunder. Then he stopped at the sliding glass door, stared into the backyard, and howled. I flicked on the porch light dot and froze. Something was standing at the edge of the yard, where the grass meets the corn. It wasn't human, but it wasn't an animal either. 7, maybe 8 feet tall, thin, upright, covered in slick fur, but hunched like a starving wolf. The porch light caught its eyes, yellow, glowing, focused on me, and I swear to God, it smiled. I slammed the blinds. Shut. Bruno whimpered and retreated behind the couch. Then the power went out. Total blackness. I grabbed a flashlight and a kitchen knife. Pathetic, I know, but it was all I had. I stayed in the living room, frozen, listening to the rain and the wind. Then I heard it. Footsteps on the porch, heavy, slow, deliberate, followed by a sound I will never forget. Sniffing like something pressing its nose against the glass. Inhaling, then a knock. Not a bang, not a scratch. Just a knock. 3 times. Slow and heavy, then silence. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I waited there in the dark until dawn broke pale and gray through the windows. When I finally stepped outside, the yard was untouched. No prints, no claw marks. But the sliding glass door had one long smear of something greasy and black, right at nose level. That day, I found claw marks on the barn door, long gouges, deep, like something had been inside, trying to get out. Not in, out. And above the door, etched into the old wood, with a knife or something sharper, were 5 letters. Come in. I didn't sleep that night. Around 1 a.m., I heard the barn door creak open. Bruno was trembling in the laundry room. Wouldn't come out? I peeked through the upstairs window. The barn was open. Inside, something moved, slowly, pacing, waiting. I did the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. I went outside, armed with a flashlight, a crowbar, and the kind of bravery that only comes from sleep deprivation and terror. The barn door was wide open, swaying on its hinges. Inside, it was black. Too black. I stepped in, shined the light across the hay. Strewn floor, nothing. Then I heard it above me. A low growl, then a whisper. My name. I turned the light toward the loft and saw it crouched in the rafters, claws gripping the beams, its mouth curling into something close to a grin. And it spoke again. Come in. I ran. Didn't stop until I was locked back inside the house. Called Matt. Told him to come home early. Didn't care if I sounded crazy. They got back the next day. Matt didn't even blink when I told him. He just nodded, then told me something that chilled my blood. My great-grandfather used to say something lived in that barn. Something they made a deal with, to keep the crops strong during the Dust Bowl. But it wanted more every year. Cattle, then dogs, then people. So they boarded it up, stopped talking about it. I asked him why he didn't tear the barn down. He just said, "You don't burn what you've fed." I don't talk to that side of the family much anymore. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear it. That knock, and that voice, calling me back. I was 16 when it happened to me. That was the year I spent the summer working for my Uncle Dean out in Monroe County, West Virginia. He owned a run-down farmhouse surrounded by woods thick enough to choke a bear. No neighbors, no stores, just dirt roads and trees that never stopped whispering. Dean wasn't right in the head. Everyone in the family said so. Talked about his time in Vietnam, the drinking, the time he shot a hole through his own ceiling because he swore something was crawling across it. But I liked him. He taught me how to use tools, how to gut a fish, how to keep quiet when things in the woods didn't sound like deer. It was the 3rd week of July when it started. The dog stopped barking at night, just whined and scratched at the porch door. Something killed one of Dean's goats and hung it from a tree, not mauled, not eaten, hung like it was a message. Dean went pale when he saw it, didn't say a word, just grabbed his rifle and started pacing the porch all night. When I asked what it could have been, he just muttered, "It's come back." Same eyes, same damn smell. That night, the air got heavy, like before a tornado, and I started hearing whistling in the woods. Not music, not wind, something mimicking a whistle, but not getting it quite right. Like it didn't know how human lungs worked. It circled the house from a distance, keeping just behind the tree line. Dean stood in the living room with the lights off, rifle pointed at the window. I asked what he was waiting for. He didn't look at me when he answered, "It waits till you're alone. Always has." The next day, Dean told me to never go near the hollow at the back of the property. Said that was where it came from. He called it the dog-faced bastard. Said it walked like a man but smelled like rotted meat and pine sap. I thought he was just drunk until I went there anyway. I just wanted to see it. A path led straight into the hollow, tight with brush and nettles. The trees bent in like a tunnel. It was cool down there, too cool and quiet. No birds, no wind, no bugs. At the bottom of the slope, I found bones, a pile of them. Some looked like deer, some didn't, and something had carved symbols into the rocks. Around the hollow, sharp spirals, claw marks, long lines that looked like runes. Then I smelled it: wet fur, mold, and something else. Sulfur. I turned around and saw eyes staring back at me from behind a tree. Tall yellow, UNBLINKING. I ran until I couldn't feel my legs. Dean was waiting on the porch when I got back. He didn't say "I told you so," just handed me a bottle of water and told me to stay inside until sunrise. That night, it came to the house. I heard it breathing through the window, heavy and wet. Then it started tapping the glass, not scratching, tapping like it had fingers. When I looked, I saw the silhouette, dog-shaped head, broad shoulders, taller than any man I'd ever seen, and it was grinning. Dean fired 3 rounds out the back window. By the time I looked again, it was gone. The next morning, Dean told me the truth. Said he saw it for the first time when he was 17. Same hollow, same grin. It had followed him for years, through war, through marriage, through every move, and now it had me, too. It picks someone, watches and waits until they're alone. Then it takes something, piece by piece. He gave me a charm, some kind of bone carved into a circle. Said it came from an old Cherokee man he met decades ago. It doesn't stop it. just slows it down. I left at the end of summer, never saw Dean again. 3 years later, he went missing. Sheriff said he wandered off drunk and fell into a ravine, but I know better. They found his rifle snapped in half, like a twig, and claw marks on the door of his truck. Now I live in Chicago. Crowded, loud, safe, or so I thought. But sometimes, when I walk home late, I catch a whiff of pine and sulfur, and once, just once, I heard a whistle outside my building, and it didn't sound right. I was 21 when it happened to me. Had just dropped out of community college and was crashing with my buddy, Keith, in southern Illinois, deep country, where the woods outnumbered the people and everyone owns a gun, even if they don't hunt. Keith's place was a beat-up single, wide trailer sitting on cinder blocks, nestled at the edge of a tree line that locals called Black Hollow, supposedly named for how dark the canopy got, even at noon. But Keith said it had a darker meaning. Said animals went missing. People too, back in the 70s, of course. I thought it was just country gossip. I didn't believe in monsters. Not back then. I had a cot set up in the living room, right next to the window. The first few nights were uneventful, aside from the sound of coyotes howling at dusk and the occasional truck rattling down the gravel road. But one night, Keith came in from smoking on the porch, pale, shaking. "Something's out there," he whispered, watching from the tree line. "It's not a coyote." I rolled my eyes. Then he showed me a photo he snapped with his phone. It was blurry, but I could make out a tall shape standing too upright to be a dog. Shoulders hunched, ears pointed back like horns. Its eyes reflected red in the flash. It growled at me, Keith said. Low, like it was talking. That night I heard it too. It started with footsteps, underneath the trailer, slow, scraping against the metal underside. Then silence, then breathing so loud I could hear it through the thin floorboards. Bruno, Keith's mutt, started growling from under the kitchen table. His hair stood up like a brush. Then something scratched the floor, right beneath my cot. I froze. Didn't move, didn't breathe, and then I heard the sniffing. Whatever it was smelling for me. In the morning, I checked under the trailer. Something had dug a shallow trench right beneath where I slept out wide, deep, almost like it was trying to burrow in. And we found claw marks on the aluminum siding, for long rakes, each over a foot long. Keith wouldn't go outside after dark anymore. The next night, I stayed up late, watching the woods. At 2:17 a.m., I saw it. It stepped out of the trees, like it owned the land. Tall, easily 7 feet, covered in patchy black fur, the head of a dog, but stretched longer. The muzzle curled upward, like it was half smiling. It didn't look at me at first. It sniffed the air. Then slowly, it turned and stared straight into the window, right at me. I couldn't look away. Its eyes weren't red that time. They were yellow and aware, like it knew exactly what I was. Keith grabbed his shotgun. We locked the doors, shut the blinds, and waited. Around 3 a.m., we heard the scratching again, under the trailer. Then the laughter. Deep, rumbling, but not human. Something pretending to sound human. "It's trying to get in," Keith whispered. "Why?" I asked. "Because it already knows who you are." We didn't sleep. And the next morning, we found footprints in the dirt outside, but only one set, not going toward the trailer, coming from underneath it. Keith called his uncle, who lived up in Wayne County, said he used to track strange animals, things that the sheriff wouldn't write up. His uncle came with salt ash, and a leather bag full of old bones carved with marks I didn't recognize. He walked the property twice, then told us, "You've got a Dogman." I asked if that was like a werewolf. He shook his head. "Worse. Werewolves are people. This thing never was. It's older than that, smarter than you, and if it's chosen you, boy, you better run. We tried burning sage, circling the trailer, with salt. Keith even left out raw meat as an offering. Nothing worked. That night, the scratching came again, but this time, it was inside the walls. We tore apart the kitchen paneling the next day and found more claw marks on the inside and a word carved into the insulation. Stay. That was my last night there. I packed my bag, thanked Keith, and left before sundown. He stayed behind. 2 weeks later, he disappeared. His mom found the trailer door wide open. Everything else was untouched, except his cot, ripped to shreds, and underneath it, dug into the earth, was a tunnel, long, deep, still, warm. I live in a city now. 6th floor apartment, concrete on all sides. But I still wake up at 3 a.m. listening, for breathing, for laughter, and sometimes, when it's raining hard, I swear I hear scratching from under the floor.